Welcome to Table for One. I'm the narrator, and in this video, I'll be comparing two games, Spirit Island and Horizons of Spirit Island. Let's get rolling. Alright, so let's jump right into it. What is Spirit Island compared to Horizons of Spirit Island, and which one might be for you? Now, this is not strictly speaking an unboxing video because both of these are open and I've used them, but I will show you all the components. But I just want to start off right at the top of telling you what the main differences are and which one might be for you. So Spirit Island is this one here on the right. This is the base game. This came out in 2017. And there are several large expansions for this game that you can get as well. I've got Branch and Claw. Jagged Earth is the main one. So I have both of those, as well as Feather and Flame, which is just a smaller, like, combined set of promos. And then the other bigger expansion is Nature Incarnate, which I do not have. And then there is Horizons of Spirit Island, which came out in 2022. That started out as an exclusive game for Target, but is now available widely. And the long and short of it is, this is a medium to heavyweight cooperative game for 1 to 4 players out of the base box. This is a cooperative game for 1 to 3 players out of this box, and this is really just the slightly toned down, more entry-level version of this box. There are some key differences that I'll get into, but if you are maybe newer to board games or newer to solo games, or you have a more limited budget to spend on your games, Horizons of Spirit Island is a totally valid entry point, and in fact, you can use it. It can be combined with all of the expansions that I mentioned earlier, with a couple of minor caveats. In either case, if you want to go down the expansion route later, start with Jagged Earth. That's the main big one, and then that introduces all the stuff you need to bolt on the other ones in whatever fashion you want. But the Spirit Island base game, this box here on the right, is really if you're more experienced with board games maybe and you just want to jump right in, or if you want these slightly nicer components, or importantly, if you want to play with 4 players, because again, they can both be played solo. This supports up to 3 players, this supports up to 4. And then if you were to get the Jagged Earth expansion, this can support up to 6. This one will really only do a max of 3 without this base box, but they've got a lot of overlap. So let's maybe start by talking about some of the components, and specifically I'll start with some of the components that are the same. So some of the things that are the same are major power cards, minor power cards, and fear cards. Both versions contain the same cards in the same quantities, and they're essentially identical. I say essentially because this was released first, and then there were all those expansions that I briefly mentioned. And when those expansions came out, they went back and made some tweaks to later printings of this base game so that the major and minor and fear card text read to be more consistent with the expansion content. And so Horizons of Spirit Island had that more consistent text from the start. So if you've got an older version of Spirit Island, the base game, the cards may read slightly differently, but they do the same thing. The intent is the same. And honestly, you probably wouldn't notice. So if you haven't played Spirit Island at all and don't know anything about it, first of all, I'll release a tutorial video playing Horizons of Spirit Island same day that I release this, so go check that out. But essentially, the minor powers and the major powers, these are cards that you earn during the game. You have some decision space over which cards that you pick up, and they allow you to take different actions. These are basically your action cards. There's minor cards and major cards. These are more powerful. They allow you to have different abilities and take cool actions on your turn. And then the fear cards are earned. So throughout the game, you're trying to scare off the invaders to this island. And as you do things that scare them, you earn these fear cards, and they've got different bonuses on them. So that's what these cards are here. And speaking of the fear cards, both games come with these fear tokens. I should say this wooden storage container here is part of a storage set that I have for Spirit Island that I bought separately, third party on Etsy. It's not. This nice storage stuff is not with either version of the game, but you track the fear that you've earned with these cardboard punch-out tokens. These are absolutely identical between the two different copies of the game. The tokens are the same. In fact, I've taken all my tokens from Horizons of Spirit Island and just combined them with my other Spirit Island fear tokens because they are identical. The only difference between the two boxes is just the quantity that they come with. Again, because this game supports up to 4 players, and this one is only up to 3, so it doesn't need quite as many, and it's got different. This has a few other modules that you can plug in, so you'll get a few more tokens, but the tokens themselves are the same between the games, and they operate the same way. And while we're on the topic of fear in this game, the Horizons of Spirit Island game comes with these 2 Terror Level 2 and 3 cards. They're just like regular cards, just like this type of card, that you would kind of put into this deck to track how far through this fear deck that you've progressed, whereas this Spirit Island base game has these 2 larger, like, cardboard punch outs. They do the exact same thing. These are just slightly nicer quality, but functionally they're identical. So that's one minor difference between the 2 boxes. Another very minor difference are just the player colors. So Horizons of Spirit Island comes with 3 colors. It's got this maroon, gold, and teal. Oops, can't quite see the gold. Let's put it this way. Maroon, gold, and teal. Each of these player colors comes with 13 wooden discs, and then 3 of these just markers that are kind of multi-purpose use markers, and they help you track various things throughout the game. Now, the base game Spirit Island, and again, I've got my own holder here. This is a third-party piece. Comes with 4 colors because it supports 4 players. It comes with red, yellow, blue, and purple. The green and orange that you see here are from an expansion, I believe, Jagged Earth. And again, each of those colors with the base game will come with 3 of these marker tokens. I've got some additional marker tokens that again came with Jagged Earth, so I now have 6 of each, but the base game would come with 3 just like these. So the colors are slightly different, and of course this supports 4 players, this supports 3, so the number of colors you have to choose from is different, but again, functionally they're all identical, and you can mix and match if you happen to have both like me. Another item that's functionally identical but very slightly cosmetically different is the Invader deck. So that's this deck of cards here. This is from the Horizons box. So you're going to flip these cards over during the game, and it tells you in what different lands the invaders are taking actions. So this side of the cards is identical between the 2 sets. It's exactly the same. But the artwork on the back is a little different. So this is from the Horizons deck, and this is from the Spirit Island base game. I've got these sleeved, so they look like a taller stack, but it's all the same stuff. So nothing different in there. You can use one deck or the other. They're going to do exactly the same thing, same cards in the same quantities. So functionally identical there. Next up, let's look at the energy tokens and the Dahan tokens. So here's the energy tokens from Horizons of Spirit Island. They come in quantities of 3 and 1, and that is going to be the same between the games. They are cardboard punch-out, but they just seem to be ever so slightly lower quality than the ones from the base game box. So I've got mine here. I think really the difference, if I were to lay them out with the base game on top, Horizons on the bottom here, I think there's just a slight background image behind the numbers on these tokens on top, whereas these are pretty flat, and the just the detail around the edges is a little less clear, and it's just a bit smaller. So, but they're all double-sided. They do exactly the same thing. It's nothing that would sway me to buy one version of the game or the other. These are not bad quality. Just having experienced these before, these are slightly higher quality. Now, let me clear some of these cards out of the way so we can look at the pieces that are different a little bit more easily. All right, so we're going to look at the Dahan tokens next. The Dahan are the inhabitants of the island, and I think this was a cost-saving measure for the Horizons of Spirit Island. They've got cardboard punch-outs like this that look like they're little Dahan huts, and they're two-sided, so on the other side it shows, I don't know if you can see the detail, it kind of looks like it's on fire. It's a damaged hut, so it's been hit. Whereas the original base game Spirit Island has these Dahan tokens, which are actually little what do you call these? You would put these in furniture to like cover up a screw. You can find them at like hardware stores. But these are little wooden tokens that kind of look like these little huts. And when you play the base game Spirit Island, you stand them upright normally, and then if they've taken 1 damage, you flip it upside down, and that's how you delineate whether it's been hit or not. So these are the Dahan from the base game, and this is what you'll find in all of the expansions, whereas this is what you would find in Horizons of Spirit Island, just these cardboard punch-outs. You know, theoretically, they do the same thing, so you could mix and match. They're just going to look a little bit different on the game board, but they operate exactly the same way. They just look a little bit different and feel a little bit different. And arguably, these are a little bit more thematic because as we're about to see, everything sort of good or, on your side in the game is represented with wood pieces. So, these Dahan pieces are wood, your presence tokens are wood, and then all of the enemy stuff, all the invader stuff is represented by plastic, but not so in Horizons of Spirit Island. So let's take a look at the bad stuff. We'll look at the not bad quality by any means, but just the bad guys, the invaders. So let's take a look at the cities, towns, and explorers, as well as blight tokens, because those are all different between the two games. So I'm just going to repeat myself a little bit here, but the, again, nice wooden storage solution is not part of the base game. That's something I purchased separately. Okay, so this is the base game components, and then these are all going to be cardboard punch-outs on the Horizons of Spirit Island version. So let's take a look first at these explorers. So here's an explorer token. It's double-sided. It's the same on both sides, whereas in the base game, it's a plastic little figure that looks exactly the same, like they nailed it, but this one actually physically stands on the board. And so as you need more and more of these, you just add more to the space where they're needed. What I did think was an improvement in the Horizons of Spirit Island was that they also included some tokens for 3 to represent 3, so there's not like this overcrowding of tokens. Because sometimes you can really have a lot of these guys on occasion, and when that happens, like even with these, it can get a little bit overcrowded. But these punch outs obviously take up more of a footprint than these, so it was a good idea to have these just represent 3 of these so you don't have quite as many pieces on the board. So we'll set those aside. So those are a little different. Here's your towns. Again, it looks just like the plastic town that I've got here, but these towns stand up and they've got a couple little buildings on them. Just like the Dahan, you can flip it over and the other side is damaged. What you normally do with these towns is similar to the Dahan. You stand them upright, and then when they take 1 hit of damage, you knock it over. And they've only got two health, so just like the Dahan. So when they take another hit, you just remove it from the board. So on this version, you just flip it over to show that it's damaged. Makes sense? And then the last invader component here is the city. And again, so it's just 3 bigger buildings similar to these cities. But what you do with these cities, so there's 3 buildings here. And you normally stand it up, and it's got 3 health. And normally, when it takes 1 hit to show that it has 2 health points remaining, you flip it like this. So there's 2 buildings still pointing up that you can see. So it's got 2 hits left. If it takes another hit, you flip it this way. It's got 1 side pointing up, 1 little building pointing up. So it's got 1 hit left. And then if it gets hit again, you remove it. So 3 health, 2 health, 1 health, gone. Whereas with these, they are double-sided, so it's got 3 health now. It still plays the same way. You flip it over to show, okay, now it's got 2 health. Then if it gets hit again, there's only so many ways to flip it. So they say take an energy token and place it on there to show that it's only got 1 hit remaining. And at that point, you can remove it. So, that's not a super common occurrence, and it's only a temporary thing because all the buildings typically get their health back at the end of each round. But still, it's a little less than ideal. You might really get a lot of tokens stacked up across your game board in that respect. So that's a small instance where I think these are a little bit superior to these, but it's not the end of the world. It still plays exactly the same way, so I don't know that would be the factor that would get me to choose this game over this one. And then last are the blight tokens. So these are cardboard punch outs. They're double-sided, same icon on both sides, and then these are the blight tokens from the base game. And actually, I think this one has some advantages over this one. So first of all, this one is not double-sided. When you flip it over, it's just like I don't know if it's injected or pressed. I don't know how they make plastic pieces, but it's just like the blank backside. And just because of the shape of these, it seems that whenever you pick them up and put them down, I don't know, they just, maybe it's just perception, but they feel like they always land on the upside down side, and it just doesn't look good. You want this side to be up, but they're a little bit harder to handle as well because they're small little circles. They can be tough to pick up. These, much easier to manage, which is nice, but also the icon here is the icon that matches all the other iconography in the game. This doesn't actually match anything. This icon tells you to put down this piece. So that was sort of a weird, I don't know how it ended up that way. It seems like it always should have been this. And then these are double-sided. Really the only downside of this one is just the size of it. And all of these cardboard pieces have a much bigger footprint than all of their either plastic or wooden counterparts. So they're taking up a lot more space on the board, and the board can get crowded sometimes. So that is the one downside of this Blight piece. But otherwise, I think iconography-wise, and just being double-sided, like this one works a lot better than these. This one's pretty nice. But then again, this one is, of course, plastic, which matches the feel of the other plastic pieces versus the wood pieces. So that's a nice little touch, too. And I can probably put these back away. That's where those go. And so I've talked about board crowding and overcrowding a number of times already. So let me clear this stuff away and then show you the boards real quick, because that's going to be an important distinction. All right, so this is the game board. It's double-sided. I'll show you the other side, but this is the board for Horizons of Spirit Island. So it does some things that are really nice. This is your island in the middle, and then there are these different lands throughout. So there's mountains, jungles, wetlands, and sands. And so in each of these spaces, this is where you're going to be putting those tokens that may start to overcrowd. So let's demonstrate just a quick, fictional but very plausible example. So let's say this land here, this is land 2 on board H. Let's say you've got one presence token there, and this icon means it starts with a city. Now later, don't worry about how or even if you understand this, but later they may explore it and build a town, and say you're able to prevent a ravage, somehow you defend it, right? And now later they explore it again, and we'll say maybe you prevent the build. In your next growth phase, maybe you add another presence token here, so you stack those up and make it a sacred site, and perhaps you gather a Dahan, and now we go into the ravage, and you've put some sort of ability down, so you want to mark it with one of these markers, and the city takes 2 hits somehow, so you're going to flip it over and add an energy token to show that, but it still blights, so you'll lose your presence, but we need to add a blight token here. So you can see, like, this is super overcrowded. And the problem is that's going to be happening in all of these adjacent lands as well at different times. And so you don't want things to accidentally slip where you're like, oh, well, was this explorer in this land or this land? Because that's going to be really important, and you'll mess up your whole game that way. So as a comparison, if we set up that same scenario using the base game components, here we go. We'll go ahead and leave these because these actually are identical to the base game. So we pulled in a Dahan. We had a city that had taken 2 damage. We had a town. There we go. 2 explorers. 1. Oh, geez. Stand them up. There we go. And a blight. And we don't need the energy token because that was just denoting that this was damaged. And we have a different way to denote it here. So everything's a lot more confined into the space of that land, and I can do an even better job of cleaning it up. So that's just a comparison and to give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about overcrowding. But let's clear some of this for now because we already went over it and we don't need it again. But what this does really nicely is it streamlines your setup. So it's got designated spots for your fear cards and the terror level card, your Invader deck, which goes here, your Blight pool is here, and it tells you, this is a 2-player side of the board, so it knows how many players you've got, presumably 2. And so your Blight pool goes here and it tells you how many Blight you need. Same with your fear pool. You've got your fear pool here. It tells you how many you need, and then your generated fear goes in this dark section here. So this does eliminate some choice during setup, but it also streamlines the whole process, makes it easier to just get this one board on the table and you can get playing much quicker. So I think that makes some sense. I'll show you the other side in a moment, but just know that either side can be played solo if you want to play by yourself, and there's directions in the booklet on how to do that. Just some minor tweaks to the Blight pool and the Fear pool. But I just want to point something out that I think is kind of interesting for those of you who are maybe more familiar with Spirit Island. So these boards are labeled G and H, and that's because the base game comes with boards A, B, C, and D, and then E and F were released with Jagged Earth. So these are 2 new island board types, G and H. And if you just look at land 8 here, the sands on board H, it does not come all the way to the end where this wetland and this mountain come to the end of this board. So when I flip this board over to the 3-player side, we have G and H again along with board F. So F is still here. We've got G and H. But if you look now opposite of the coast, this land 8, this sand does come all the way to the end to be in line with this land 4 mountain and land 7 wetland. That is, I don't know why they did that. It's interesting. I mean, I think this side makes more sense for this configuration, but there's 2 versions of board H, and I think that that's kind of strange. But anyway, here's how some of this works. I'm going to pull this down a little bit closer to me. So you've got this fear section here. At the beginning of the game, normally you put 3 fear cards there, and then you'll take your level 3 terror card, place it there, And these fear cards will be shuffled and randomized. You'll get 3 more, and then you're level 2, and then 3 more. And then you'll have some extras. So then you make your nice little stack here, and as you play the game, you're going to earn some of these cards, and they're going to go to this earned fear cards pile. And as you earn them, when the time comes, you reveal them, you follow the instructions, then place them here in this fear discard. And when one of these cards is revealed, you're going to take it and place it over this. So you start at terror level 1, and this is your victory condition. You've got to remove all the invaders from the island, the cities, the towns, and the explorers. You notice here on terror level 2, cities and towns only. You don't even have to worry about the explorers. So as you get through this deck, it becomes easier to win. So terror level 3, just eliminate the cities, and then if you manage to get the entire deck cleared, it says victory when revealed. It's just an auto win. So there's a space for these fear cards and these terror levels up here at the top right of the board. And then down here in the bottom right, that's where these cards are going to go, the Invader deck. And so as the game goes on, they tell you to explore certain lands, and then later you will build in those lands and explore here. And then they continue to shift down. The next round you'll ravage here, build here, and explore here. And then this goes into a rotated discard pile. So you'll work your way through these cards, and they'll slide through this progression as you play the game. So again, there's a built-in spot for those, so that is a little bit easier for setup, just to have it all on one board. So you decide, am I playing 2-player or 3-player, and then you pick the side. If you're going to play solo, just put it on the 3-player side, because it really shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter which board you pick. You're just going to play on either F, G, or H. And if you're playing on H, either configuration, either on the other side of the board or this H with the different land 8, it's not going to matter. It's going to play out the same way in a solo game only. It really only affects the interaction between these two lands. Don't worry about it. So in your Blight pool spot here, it says 16 Blight. That just means you place 16 of these tokens here, which I have not done. I've placed 5. But as you play the game, you'll need to take these Blight tokens, put them on certain lands, and as it says here, if there's ever no Blight here, you lose the game. So if this is empty, you've lost. So that's a timer for the end of the game. And then working our way back around to fear, I'll bring this down again. This is your fear pool. So on this side of the board, you start with 12. It's typically, standard is just 4 of these fear tokens per player. And again, these tokens were identical between the two games. And just as you earn them, you slide them over to this other pool. And once this pool is emptied, you get your next fear card in this deck. That's where those come from. So these are just going to be sliding back and forth from one pool to the other. And once this part is empty, you slide them back again. So it's just delineating the places where these tokens should go. And of course, the symbol on the token matches this symbol here. So that makes a lot of sense. So let's put this board over to the side. And let's put it next to the board that comes with the base game Spirit Island. And that is right here. So functionally, it has a lot of the same things. Your fear pool, which we just talked about, is here in the middle. You put your unearned tokens at the top and you slide them down as you earn them. Your fear deck, this deck here, is here. Your earned fear cards go here instead of here. So instead of going left, you're going down. And then this is your fear discard. So again, they go your deck, your earned cards, and your discard. This is your deck, your earned cards, and your discard. And if you reveal this bottom one, again, it's an auto victory. It works the exact same way, but this one's got the nicer artwork. And again, if you work your way down this deck, you'll reveal new terror levels. So again, it starts terror level 1 is by default. It is the exact same conditions. You're playing the same game, but then this is the terror level 2 cardboard punch out and the terror level 3, but it works identically to this. Your Invader deck down here works exactly the same way as well. Explore, build, ravage, and discard. They move across the same way. This little artwork is a little bit different, but it's really the same. And then your Blight pool is here. We will talk about Blight in a little bit more detail in a moment. But one big thing that is missing, if you compare this board and this board, is that this one doesn't have an island. So I did point out that the Horizons board has islands F, G, and H, and that the base game comes with A, B, C, and D. So this is a major difference. This is how the boards look in the base game. So it's A, B, C, and D. And each piece, you can take it and combine it with other pieces in whatever way you want. So you can make a lot more different configurations. Some of them are more difficult, some are easier. The layout is a little bit different. That's the A, B, that's the letters are referring to, is just the layout of the board. There's some principles that stay the same and some that change, but obviously there's 4 here. So it's really, if you haven't caught on, 1 board per player by default. If you're playing solo, you're playing on 1 board. 2 players, you randomly pick 2 boards, you pick 3 boards for 3, all 4 boards for 4 players. And then you can put them together in different configurations and play your game that way. Now, frustratingly, the boards are not the same size, and as you saw on this, not even identical from one side to the other. So they don't quite line up, and the adjacencies are really important. So you've got to know, like, does this land touch that land or not? And so they don't quite line up. So if you do start with Horizons and then you were to get, say, Jagged Earth, which comes with boards E and F like this, you wouldn't be able to take board E and like smoothly slot it somewhere onto this board. It's just not going to work. So if you think you want to go that route, you might want to get this base game, because this is a little bit more versatile. Now, another major difference on the boards, this board is called the balanced board because these are balanced. But on the opposite side, it does have the thematic boards, which are a little bit more swingy. They're more thematic, but not as balanced. That's probably why they're named what they're named. So this gives you the option to play with this side. I actually never do. I like the balanced side. And I think most people tend to prefer the balanced side, even people who've played a lot of games. There's definitely diehards out there who like the thematic side, but I like the predictability and the balance of these sides. So there's nothing like that on the Horizons of Spirit Island boards. They're all just the balanced side, which if I could only have one, that's what I'd have. But it's something else to know just in terms of variability. All right, now I said I'd come back to the Blight pool over here. You can play with the Blight pool just like this, and it's going to play the same way as this Blight pool over here. And, same idea. If this Blight pool ever runs out, then you instantly lose the game. But one difference between the base game and Horizons is that the base game comes with these 2 Blight cards, and they say Healthy Island on top. And so what you do with these is you place one randomly. They look the same on the Healthy Island side, and you put some Blight tokens on it. And if it ever runs out, you don't lose. You flip the card over, and then it has additional instructions, and these are different on each card. And you get a little bit more Blight, and then you may have some sort of either penalty or bonus, depending on what the card is. So it's going to add a little variability. And then if you run out a second time, now you've lost the game. These make it a little bit harder. On the base game specifically, because you only get these 2 cards, you get Downward Spiral and Memory Fades to Dust. And I remember both of these being kind of punishing, and you've only got the 2, so you've got a 50-50 chance of getting either one. So that was maybe a mistake on the release of this game, which they more than remedied with all the expansions. Like, each expansion comes with a bunch of these Blight cards, so I've got a ton of them now, and so you never know what you're going to get, and some of them do really interesting things. But there are no Blight cards for Horizons of Spirit Island. That mechanic is not there. You just have the basic Blight pool, just like what's on this board. So it's not totally different, but you don't have the option to add these in. And once you start playing with these, it's kind of like the only way to play. You don't really go back. This is a little bit more boring, but it's also a little simpler. It's less rules to remember. So no Blight cards with Horizons of Spirit Island. You'll get 2 with the base game of Spirit Island, and then more with each expansion. And the base game does have a couple of other things that I want to point out that Horizons does not have. So one of those is these adversary cards. There are 3 of them: Kingdom of England, Kingdom of Sweden, and the Kingdom of Brandenburg, Prussia. And these are just modules you can use. It's just this one card that you add, and it makes the invaders follow additional specific rules that give them a different flavor, a different feel each time. And each of these has 7 different levels that you can use to add to the difficulty, so you can make them progressively more difficult. So this adds some variation as well. These also come with a couple of little reminder cardboard punch outs to help you remember some of the changes that they make. So you might lay some of these out on the board like this here, or like this here, to do different things. That's sort of incidental, but yeah, these 3 adversaries are not included in Horizons of Spirit Island either, and I think it's just because it's a lot of additional rules overhead, and they're trying to simplify this one a little bit. Sometimes I use these, but I have not gotten into them nearly as much as a lot of other people. These are super important to a lot of people in the Spirit Island playing community, so maybe these are for you, especially if you get really good at your games. Additionally, the base game came with 4 scenarios. I've used a couple of these. These are fun for, I don't know, just a little something different. They're not as popular as the adversaries, but each one of these gives you some slight rules variation, maybe a new win condition and or new loss condition. Some of the pieces may behave in different ways. So adversaries and scenarios are generally included in I think all the expansions. at least one of each. I could be wrong about that, but there won't be any scenarios in Horizons of Spirit Island either. So both of these are going to be in the base game only. And then, of course, the biggest change, I think, I've buried the lead a little bit. Let's talk about the spirits. So I'm going to clear this stuff out, and then we'll talk about the spirits. Okay, so here are the spirits. These on the left are from Horizons. These on the right are from the base game. These are the ones that come with the game. So a couple things to talk about. Some cosmetic differences, first of all. These are card stock. So it's like the same thing that your playing cards would be made out of. So they're thinner. They're a little more flexible. Whereas these are like a harder type chipboard. So they're thicker, a little more durable. Now, one thing to note is if you like the more durable ones, this is what comes with the Horizons box, but you can buy just these panels as an add-on online from the publisher in this style. Likewise, if you like this style, this is what comes in the Spirit Island box, but you can buy this version online from the publisher if you'd rather have these. These I kind of prefer. I like the more durable, more solid pieces. But as I gather more expansions and get more and more, I'm having a harder time storing these because they're so thick. So there's 8 of these here. There, let's just take 3 of them out. 5 of these. There are 5 versus 5 of these. And you can sort of see the difference in height. So it's a lot to store these. And so if you haven't gathered, base game Spirit Island comes with 8 spirits out of the box. Horizons comes with 5. Now, one important thing to note, these have a complexity rating. So you get 4 low complexity spirits. These are really the ones to start with. And then you get, and this is in the base game box, 2 moderate and 2 high complexity. Some of the expansions do have very high complexity. But it allows you to kind of step your way into some of these more interesting to play, but more difficult to learn spirits. Whereas in Horizons, these are all, it doesn't even have the rating on it, but they're all low complexity spirits. So you're not going to have that like higher level of crunchy decision making that you would have with these spirits. However, this is an important point. I think these low complexity spirits are better to learn the game Spirit Island than all of these low complexity spirits. I would start with these for sure. Some of these are, this one is difficult to learn with. This one can be a little bit prescriptive and a little bit slow. This one you can get yourself into a jam fairly easily. It lets you do some stuff, but it doesn't teach you some of the stuff that you need to know to play other spirits. This is really, if you're going to learn the game, I would start with this one. This is the one I recommend to people when they're learning Spirit Island is River, Surges, and Sunlight. That's the one to start with. But in Horizons, these are all good. And part of the reason for that is this game came out 5 years after this one, so developers had more time to learn how to make these spirits and how to balance them and how to test them. And so these are just all great. And so having had Spirit Island for a few years, I still wanted this, not just because they're better for learning, but because they're, even as low complexity spirits, they're still fun to play with. Like, I don't really use these low complexity ones when I'm playing by myself anymore. I'm going to use at least the moderates, if not the highs or the very high complexity. But these are neat. These do cool things. It's kind of worth it to have these. And at the price point for Horizons, if you've already got the base game Spirit Island, it's not a bad price just for the 5 spirits. In my opinion, these are pretty good. Now I was able to get this in a trade, so that was a good price point too. But I will say the spirits all function the same way. So between these 8 and these 5, all of them start with 4 custom power cards that are going to have artwork matching the card here. So you get these 4 cards that are unique to you to start the game, and then you can add more cards to your deck from those major and minor power card decks that we talked about earlier. That again are going to be functionally identical between the 2 games. So when I talk about these being easier, if you've got maybe more familiarity with Spirit Island, one of the things that they did not do in these low complexity spirits originally, because they thought it would be too complex, was they didn't have any elements on the tracks. You'll notice the tracks are all just energy on the top and card plays on the bottom. Not so in Horizons. In Horizons, they gave you elements on the tracks because it turned out that that's not that difficult of a concept to learn. It was fine for beginners. So I can show you that here. There we go. And then if you look at these tracks here, they all have some sort of space where you're repeating the previous benefits. So 2 energy, 4, 4. Here's 2, 2, 4, 4 again, plus 2, 2 card plays, 1 card play to 1 card play, 2 to 2. And then again here, 3 cards to 3 cards. And that is not super fun, especially for a new, inexperienced player. And on these two spirits in particular, the most presence you can ever put out in a turn is 1, unless there's some other sort of power card shenanigans going on. So that means for your whole turn, your upgrade is you get nothing. You technically advance your track, you put a presence down, but your stats are going to be the same if you select those upgrade paths, which is not super fun. So that is way toned down on the Horizons of Spirit Island spirits. The only place it happens is on this spirit here. It goes from 1 energy to 1 on that first space, and this spirit goes from 2 card plays to 2 card plays on that space. But you'll notice both of those spirits have the ability to put down 2 presents at a time, so you can go from 1 to 2 card plays, and you don't feel like you've lost an upgrade. Same thing here. You can go from 1 energy to 2 energy. It just slows you down getting there a little bit. Or, alternatively, you can put down 1 from each track, so you're still getting 1 energy, but now you've upped your card plays. So that's one thing to be aware of. And then all of these spirits are going to have, a special rule and 1 innate power. They did stick to 1 innate power for the low complexity spirits, but they're all great. The special rules actually are all really interesting. So let me go through them really quick. So in Sunbright Whirlwind, we have a stiff wind at their backs. After you add presence during growth, push up to 1 explorer or Dahan from that land. That's pretty cool, pretty thematic. Rising heat of stone and sand, special rule is blistering heat. At your sacred sites, invaders have -1 health to a minimum of 1. I like that too. That's super simple, but really handy. Fathomless mud of the swamp, special rule is offer no firm foundations. At your sacred site, build actions add explorers instead of towns or cities. Awesome. Love it. That's really cool. It gives you incentive to have sacred sites. It's probably a more powerful action than maybe a newer player would appreciate. If you can slow down those builds, that's huge. Eyes Watch from the Trees has a special rule, Dahan Trust the Watchers. After one of your powers adds Defend to a single land, gather up to 1 Dahan into that land. That's really handy. That's, move Dahan around, counteract the ravages. That's great. And then Devouring Teeth Lurk Underfoot has the special rule of Territorial Aggression. Your damage dealing powers do +1 damage. Again, very simple, but very handy, very cool. And then the other thing they did on these Horizon spirits was they put little footnotes under the special rules and under the innates, and even sometimes throughout the innates, just to give you reminders because they understand that you're learning the game. So for example, this says here under this innate powers perform all thresholds reached in order on the same target land. Like that's just a rule of the game, but they remind you of it because they understand that there's kind of a lot going on, and that's a good place to have a reminder. So there you go. There's the spirits of Horizons of Spirit Island compared to the low complexity spirits of the base game. But again, once you do learn the game, you might have interest in playing these moderate complexity spirits. So Thunder Speaker is a heavy Dahan usage spirit. Spread of Rampant Green is really cool. You get extra growth all the time, so it's just super fun. Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares is heavily a fear spirit, but not so much an attacking spirit, which does some interesting things. That's a little bit juicier to play. And Ocean's Hungry Grasp is a lot of fun as well, with presence being placed in the ocean and moving in and out of the from the ocean to the coast and back again, like with the tides. So it does some really cool things, but you got to work your way up to it. And I would argue it's better to start working from this perspective. So that was a lot, but I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about and the differences between Horizons of Spirit Island and the base game Spirit Island. I just thought it would be helpful to get all that info out there. And then, as I said, I'm going to play and release on the same day I release this video a short tutorial on how to play Horizons of Spirit Island using one of the spirits in this box. So maybe one of these is more for you than the other, but I think there's certainly something for most everyone in at least one of these boxes. Again, just to hammer it home, they are at their core the same game. The gameplay works the same way. They've just got some different components and some things stripped down a little bit for efficiency's sake and for ease of learning in this Horizons of Spirit Island box, with, of course, the big difference being the different spirits. But I think now I've said everything I want to say. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And of course, on a personal note, I can't recommend, I guess, either of these games enough. Spirit Island is one of my quote unquote forever games. I think it'll be in my collection forever. I table it all the time. You'd be surprised probably how often I play it, given that I don't play it on the channel very much. But I did make a bunch of Spirit Island content in past years. So go back and check my back catalog and you can find more Spirit Island games, and I'll be sure to get some more up here soon. So if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe to the channel and feel free to share this with somebody else who you think might enjoy it. Leave a like or leave some comments to let me know what you think as well, just so I know if you want more content of this type. And again, if you're still trying to figure out what you might want to buy, or if Spirit Island at all is even for you, go check out the solo playthrough of Horizons of Spirit Island that I just released. And you can find a link for that in the description. So that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching Table from One, and I will see you next time.